I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is roll call.
Councilmember Neighbor. Here. Councilmember here. Member First.
Here.
Recording in progress.
Here. Number 2, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 19th, 2024?
Actually, the minutes were not included in your packet for this meeting. They're not finished yet, so we'll bring those to you at your March meeting.
So we'll continue to the March meeting. Okay. Thank you. Public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public, and thank you all for being here. This is a opportunity for you to speak on any item that is not on today's agenda. I believe we have speaker cards, or do we? No. Okay. Oh, perfect. They're over there. So if you fill out the speaker card, that'd be great. But you can do it after if you want to speak to the commission. Go ahead and do so now. And then you can fill that out after. Okay.
Will we sign the list? Do we need a card also?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Do I need to go get a card if I sign the list?
Yes.
Yeah. Speaker.
Where do we get the card?
What's this card? It's the yellow card.
Oh, thank you. First timers at this one.
Good afternoon,
Who do we give it to?
Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm Doug Mann, Secretary of Citizens for Balanced Growth. Some of you may only have a vague idea about CGB and the Doherty Valley Settlement Fund, and we would like to present an overview. Our fund is used in very similar ways as the Altamont Fund. And today's meeting is ironically similar to the meeting that happened 25 years ago that led to the creation of the Doherty Fund. Here's some history. In late 1998, the Zone 7 board held a public hearing on the subject of selling water to customers in Contra Costa County. That's outside Zone 7's district borders. They hastily agendized new documents and gave everyone little time to review. The process was being ushered through too quickly. Many people, including CBG and some of our executives, such as former Livermore Mayor Don Miller, former Zone 7 Director Margaret Tracy, former LBJ USD Director Jim Day, as well as Livermore Vice Mayor Tom Ryder, future DSRSD Director Tom Ford, and Sierra Club Cynthia Patton pointedly informed Zone 7 that they were about to break the law. CBG sued, and we ended up with a settlement sourced from funds from San Ramon Housing Fellows. Three of the four grant requests before you today rely on our fund in order to close escrow. And I give a website, I'll give you this so that you can learn more about the history of the fund and CPG. This committee has only ever had one grant on any agenda, to my knowledge, about one per year. Today you have an unprecedented 4 grant requests before you, representing about 25% of an increase of all proposals over 25 years. Livermore hastily applied for these grants only last Thursday. To put on an agenda so quickly all of this stuff and have a special meeting so soon is a big mistake. Chair Wilson, on Tuesday, we asked you to cancel this meeting, and we regret you didn't find that to be a wise choice. We are hopeful that as soon as the rules allow, one of the honorable board members will move with support of a second that items 4, 5, and 6 be continued to a future date and allow us to work things out with Livermore so that there won't be any funding gap to deal with. These projects should not be delayed, mishandled, or compromised. But we need time to make sure we avoid a failed outcome on any of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public or online that would like to speak on an item that's not on today's agenda?
There are no no raised
I
hands
do.
online.
Yes, here.
2 different ones.
Please.
Not on the agenda?
So this is for items not on the agenda? So-
Yes, it's just a brief comment regarding the way things go and when we put things in order so fast. And there's always usually a hidden agenda behind it. My name's Kelly Gavea, and I run a nonprofit rescue for animals. We have over 350 animals. I've been doing it for over 16, 17 years now. 100% funded by my family and the public, and every penny goes to them. I take no salary. And it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication. And I have learned that people that are in your positions genuinely care. Planners, developers, you guys have all got people in your ears constantly pulling at you, wanting money, wanting this, wanting that, for this and that. But there are things at stake today that don't cost you any money, that don't cost any hardship. There's no repercussions in the future in the existence that they are right now. And they should be allowed time to be able to do the thing and be able to acquisition it themselves. And there are huge groups throughout this Tri-Valley area with an incredible amount of influence who all want to participate in that acquisition. So that way the taxpayers don't have any problem having to handle this. So to take the burden and any liability in the future from the things that you do with this acquisition, because there is hidden agendas in it. This kind of thing doesn't happen without it being there. And I want to say something. My husband happens to have a trucking company. And if you take a nice little drive up that Altamont and go up over it, you will see a brand new battery storage operations facility that was acquired for $6 million on 150 acres. But as you drive in the slow lane, you're going to start seeing burn marks all in the road. Huge burn marks from semi-trucks that our governor has insisted have a regen system in it that produce more toxic waste and more fumes than ever you could possibly imagine. And it's squashed, it's not put. All of these electric vehicles, none of it, and the damage that they're causing is not put on the news because they have an agenda. But you can see the burn marks and the Tesla marks and everything else all along and up and down the sides of the freeway. You can look for yourself and see them. And yet we've built hybrids that are efficient and they're a nice balance, and we're ignoring them. 8 years ago, all of you in this room remember the huge crisis that we had here in California with our energy and our electricity. You remember, we had no power, and in the heat and in the winter, we were all suffering because we hadn't had the power, and we had to buy the power from Oregon and Washington and Arizona at a cost 5 times more than what we were putting out. And we got Schwarzenegger in those. God forbid, somebody who's literally in the public's eye. And he reconciled it. And he made it so we could all enjoy the rest of our summer. Nobody was thinking of the consequences of the mass intake it's going to take to have battery power, and the toxicity, and all of the problems that's going to have with these battery plants and then burning up. Last year, my husband was in one of those trucks that caught on fire and burned up, and he almost lost his life. And nobody knows about it because they're hushing it up. You people in this room have an immense amount of power, an incredible amount of power. And everybody coming to you, 99% of the time, you're all saying yes. You have the right to say no. You have a right, you don't owe these developers anything. The source of government is one purpose, to protect its people and its property. That's what you're supposed to be doing, because you genuinely care. And none of you are going to be in the positions you are in another 10 years from now. Is this the legacy that you want to leave? People leaving in droves because they can't stand toxicity and battery plants that are being put at the bases of the Altamonts, because that's the best place, because what they didn't tell you in the governor's new plan is that those semi-trucks that are all now going to be powered by batteries, they can't make the load when they're showing them and they've got their nice female.
I appreciate your comments, but your time is
My time is just, I'm almost just closing. Those batteries, those trucks, when they're fully loaded, can't make the trip up there. That's why they need to have power stations everywhere, because they can't make it. So who's going to absorb the cost of that? All of us. All of us. And who's going to be able to handle all of that electricity? All of us. And when there's fumes and the people are leaving your cities and your counties because they don't want to be here anymore, and they're leaving in droves at over 45,000 people per year, is that what you really want? Or do you just want to wait a little bit and take a breather from it all and say, you know what, let's get back to this later? Because right now, that land It's being handled really well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any more speakers that want to speak on items that are not on today's agenda? I thought there was one more person in the back.
Thank you, Jesus.
We wanted to speak on the cross when you get to item 6, I think it is.
Okay,
I see no raised hands in the room or online.
perfect, thank you. I have a question for council. Is there a way we could just go 4, 5, and 6 together? Hear the staff presentation together? That way the staff doesn't have to go in and out, in and out, in and out. We can vote on them differently, separately, however we want. But I'm wondering if the staff just can present all 3 at once, if that's okay. Is that all right with you guys? Just so they, not interaction, just, public can speak on the items individually as many times as they want. If they want to speak on 4, 5, and 6, we'll give them the time. But just for staff's perspective, if they can just run through all 3 of them.
Ordering the agenda is at the chair's discretion, so if you would like to move items around as long as they are properly agendized, then that's fine. Any action taken on those items should be clear as to which item the action is on.
Okay. So is that okay with members just to have staff present all 3 items at the same time?
I'm not that comfortable with it going that way. I'd rather consider each one individually.
Neither of the
I
people.
mean, you can still consider it individually. I was just going to have staff present 4, 5, and 6 together. But if I don't have consensus, then I'm not going to do it. So we just go to item 4.
John, I have a question about procedure. The issue was raised that that these were put on very quickly and the public hasn't had a chance to thoroughly investigate all these different items. I understood that this meeting was called several weeks ago. I'd like a timeline from somebody, if anybody knows, when the city came to this committee to ask for this specific committee meeting.
My recollection is that the city informed the committee, I believe in January, that they would have grant applications.
That's correct.
We were not informed of the specific properties until last week when we received the grant applications. Okay.
I think,
end of right before the holiday.
yeah, it was before the holidays. That's when Steve Stewart came back. It was back in December, wasn't it?
I meant, sorry, the President's Day weekend holiday.
That we received the applications.
I
It
think
was
that
presented to the committee though back in December.
I don't.
there was a reference under future agenda items, I think by Mr. Stewart in our November meeting that this would be coming.
Yes.
Nothing came. And then I think you, Mr. Riley, at the last meeting made reference under future agenda items that this would be coming to the next meeting, I think. So the way I remember.
That's my recollection as well.
I'm just wondering, because the next meeting is actually March and this is a special meeting. I'm just wondering if the committee thinks the public's had enough time to thoroughly investigate all these different ins and outs and the political politics behind some of this, and whether we need to put this off to the March meeting.
Does anyone else want to?
Oh, I don't, but
I would second that.
I can tell you that it has not been staff's or this committee's, or particularly staff's role in the past to look at the political issues or anything like that involved in considering a grant application. This settlement agreement is very specific about what criteria the committee is supposed to consider in considering a grant application. So it's the habitat value, the scenic value, and the value for non-motorized recreation are the primary criteria cited in the settlement agreement. So any other political issues or anything like that have not been considered by this committee in the past. That I believe that would be more in the purview of the acquiring entity or the grant applicant.
Thank you.
I think my only concern is that we've and I think this is more of a council question. Normally, the applicant is a group, special interest, East Bay Regional Park, Special District, property owner. I don't know if we've ever done one in conjunction with the city. And my concern is this, am I, and I ask this because people can turn perception into reality when you're in the political realm, am I allowed to vote on something that's within the district of the community that I serve in? Am I allowed to vote on that? I'm more worried about that as an issue for me. Either way I vote, I came with an open mind. I understand we're not dealing with the political aspect of this, but I think David has a pretty good question, but again, we are looking to acquire property. That's our goal and our task. I just want to make sure we're not heading down a path that we're not supposed to head down, is my only concern.
The committee has made grants to multiple kinds of entities in the past, including to the city of Livermore, and it has not been past practice to refuse when someone is acting on behalf of the jurisdiction that they are doing as the assigned committee member and within the parameters of the settlement agreement.
Okay.
And I will add that, the reason that these are on the agenda and this was published within the timelines and beyond the timelines for a special meeting under the Brown Act, multiple actions are possible. The purpose of it being agendized is for discussion and action. So if there is a desire to take action to continue the item, to approve the item, to disapprove the item, those are all within the committee's discretion, and that would just be subject to a vote.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? So, item number 4, it would be the grant proposal for the Hartford Hills property.
Good evening, Chair, or good afternoon, Chair, Committee. So the City of Livermore is presenting 4 distinct applications for funding this afternoon. We wanted to talk about the Hartford Hills property first. But before we got into that, I wanted to provide a brief background as to Livermore's open space acquisition program. So the City of Livermore has general plan policy that encourage and facilitate open space preservation in and around the city. And we have a robust and successful open space program to do so. And the city acquires open space parcels for preservation in perpetuity for open space and conservation purposes. Open space easements are placed on those properties, and often Livermore works with partner agencies like the Tri-Light Conservancy or LARPD or others to manage those properties. And so specifically, if you go to the next slide, that'd be great. Specifically, we're requesting for, again, here's a map of the 4 parcels that we're looking at. And for 3 of those, we're looking for open space conservation in perpetuity. And we'll begin with, if we go to slide 3, that'd be great. We'll begin with the Hartford Hills property that's located just to the west of Springtown. So it's about 82 acres in size. You can see it's located just to the west of the existing subdivision and urban growth boundary for the City of Livermore. It's bisected by Altamont Creek, and we've included some images there as well. You can see some of the annual grassland. There's an image there of the wetland as well. There's areas of lowland and highland value. Next slide, please. And so the City of Livermore was contacted by the property owner to inquire whether the city would be interested for open space preservation. After investigating the biological report and the site, the city is interested in open space preservation on the site. So we've worked with the property owner. We got an appraisal for the property, and we've got an offer letter of intent for about $1.9 million for acquisition of the property. So all in with other transaction costs, the total cost for the project here would be close to $2 million. And the City of Livermore is requesting the Altamont Committee's funding for about half of that, so at $980,000. Where the City of Livermore would provide the other half, $980,000 in its own open space funds. Next slide, please. So according to a biological study prepared by the applicant, the property does have significant biodiversity value on site. There have been confirmed incidences in the past of special status species, particularly of red-legged frog and tiger salamander. You can see those stock photos on the left. But also habitat for other special status species like fairy shrimp as well. The property also has a substantial recreation value because it represents a critical gap in the trail network, a proposed trail network for the city of Livermore. So we're showing a graphic here of the city's active transportation plan. You can see Trail T6 there runs along Altamont Creek and through the property. And so if the city is able to acquire the property, we could ultimately construct the rest of the portion of the trail on the property connecting to the Los Colinas overpass and ultimately to the rest of the city's trail network. And this would significantly connect Springtown residents to the rest of Livermore. In addition, the property scored high marks on the committee's strategic sort of land value tool for its recreation purposes, given its ease of access from existing subdivision to the east. The property also has strategic value. Again, we noted that it's along the city's urban growth boundary. So if the city were able to acquire the property in perpetuity for open space conservation purposes, we would be able to prevent further encroachment into open space and wildland areas from the existing subdivision to the east and preserve our urban growth boundary and the green belt in that area. Next slide, please. So just as a recap, City of Livermore staff has found that the property does meet Altamont Open Space Committee funding criteria. So we do have a willing seller for the property. City of Livermore will be providing additional funding for the property. And we've got biodiversity, visual non-motorized recreation, strategic land value. And it's for those reasons that the City of Livermore requests that the Altamont Landfill Open Space Committee expend $980,000 in open space funds to assist the city's acquisition of the Hartford Hills property for conservation and open space purposes in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Mr. First.
You mentioned that the T6 trail is part of the recreational value of that area. How committed is the city actually building that trail? Because this has gone on for a very, very long time. And the city really has not put a lot of time and energy into this trail. And now you're telling us that because it had checked the box for recreational value, but I don't see any historic commitment by the city to actually build the trail. So you're going to tell us that the trail will be built by the city in my lifetime?
So, the City Council's approved the active transportation plan, which calls for those trail improvements in that area. And so the council would have to program construction of that particular trail into the city's capital improvement program. But it is the intent to fulfill the active transportation plan and construct that trail T6 to connect Springtown to the rest of the city network.
If I'm not mistaken, the past general plan by the city also included that trail 10, 15 years ago. That trail has been on the city's plan, it's been on the LARPD plan for at least 20 years. The city hasn't done anything. So you're saying this new general plan, it's there, it's going to be built, but it was on the previous plans. So I'm still trying to get a commitment from somebody from the city to tell me that's going to be built. And otherwise you shouldn't check off the box that it has any recreational value.
And I think we concur that in order for us to legitimately say checks that box, that we do need to take a more active approach. What happens when we own the property, though, it gives us a lot more ability to actually construct that trail. We're not dealing with a third party trying to get easement, buying that easement to put a trail on the land. So I do think if we buy it, if we get it, then we can program it into our CIP budget, and it's our property, so we don't have to get that easement, which sometimes can be difficult. So I think that can help, and we will try to prioritize that.
Can you clarify that with your permission, I'll continue.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Can you clarify that the cost per acre is now $23,000?
That is correct on the appraisal.
23.9.
23, I got 23,415, but 23. That's quite an increase over the information that we were given recently about the cost per acre is generally in the 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 range, and now it's 23. Do we know why?
Yeah, so we spoke to the appraiser about that. We had an outside appraiser conduct an appraisal, and they had mentioned that the proximity to the city boundary, the flat kind of lands of the property, and the county's land use designation to build a single residence and potentially ADU as well, kind of all factored into the appraisal value. And that's what we were told was a bit higher than some other parcels that may be further out.
So is this within or outside the city limits?
Outside.
Outside. So the city's going to annex this to the cities to be within the city limits?
That's not the intent or part of this application. The goal here is to own it, to preserve it in perpetuity for open space.
So what is the procedure ethics of the city buying land outside the city limits? Is that
We've done that before to preserve open space. We have a variety of examples, both in North Livermore and South Livermore, where we either are part of an easement or own land that's under easement for permanent conservation outside of our boundaries, or Doolin Canyon as well, Springtown, for this express purpose of having it long-term as open space. And we don't generally need to or plan to annex that in.
Can I just ask, how much money do we have in the fund currently available to purchase, or to grant?
It's over $21 million.
It's $21 million. That's that, and yeah, is that just the B side?
Yes.
Correct. All right. Well, in regard to the price per acre, not only this one, but the others we'll talk about later, looking over this information we've just recently provided, past purchases and the cost per acre, I noticed that only two of them, both having to do with Doolin Canyon road purchases, does the purchase price, does the grant amount exceed 50% of the total purchase price? And it seems in most cases, it's far less than the total purchase price. Here, we're being asked for a grant of 50% of the total cost, and some of the others are fairly large percentages as well. Describe, I don't know if you're familiar with history or not, but just enlighten me on why that is in the past and why it's different now.
Yeah, I think, so we look at the big picture of the funds that we have available to us, and both the properties you see today as well as potential future opportunities. Certain funds that are available to us cannot be used everywhere in the city or in the Tri-Valley area. So we have to look really carefully at which properties can use which funding. And so again, we want to, just like the committee, we want to make sure our funding goes, we get the most bang for our buck, the most acres for the dollars we're using. And so in this case, we felt it was important to try to do a 50-50 split to also preserve some of the other funds we have available to us to continue to buy other properties that meet the goals of the city, as well as hopefully the committee for long-term preservation, open space. So I guess what I'm saying is it's a little bit of a case-by-case basis. Sometimes it's based on where it's located and what funding we have available to us for the city to help match. And sometimes we'll need a little bit more for the committee to help make that all work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I certainly understand that. More recently, property values do go up, of course. And a lot depends on specific properties and location. So I just want to ask staff also, has the committee in the past operated by any sort of guidelines as to the percentage of purchase price in terms of determining the grant amount?
Historically, the committee has favored applications that where the money being requested from the open space fund is not the only funding source, but I don't recall a specific percentage being considered in the past.
Okay. And as regards this particular property, I noticed in the grant application there was an attachment from Olderding Environmental. I didn't see it in the other applications, but this speaks primarily to the biological feasibility of granting or assisting with the purchase of the property for species and habitat preservation. And it looks like there's quite a number of species that are identified here. which is in, it certainly checks some of the boxes for what the committee is assigned to do.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
So I guess I'm wondering why there are no, well, I think I'm going out of order on the agenda, but why we have this analysis for this one, but not the others.
Yeah, and so we were provided the biological study by the applicant in this case, and assisted in our analysis of biological resources. Steve, you can speak to that.
Yeah, so they give us information, but we also have other resources we use to determine the biological value of properties. Obviously, we have the mapping tool here that the committee uses. We have, some internal knowledge as well of some of the species that are out there, because again, we hold easements in that area already, so we're pretty familiar with a lot of the properties. So, although in this case a biological study helps, we don't always need that because we often have our own baseline information. So, some of the other applications don't have that, but we feel strongly we already know kind of what's out there based on our experience, right? And basically on the mapping tool as well that we use.
Okay. So this was from the property owner.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
which was good information, which we appreciate.
Yeah, very good information. Okay. So I have no other questions on this item.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
So, the $23,000, $23,000 per acre is based on a $1.9 million price, right?
Yes.
And we're asking for half of that from this committee, which would be roughly half the cost per acre, right? So
Yes.
I don't know if Mr. Schneider's spreadsheet, is that cost per acre for this committee, irrespective of the final cost of the
The cost per acre is
From
the
this
total
kit.
cost. No, the total cost.
total cost, irrespective of where the money came from?
Correct.
I guess my point was, if you're concerned about,
In the past,
Yes.
for most of those properties, it was split 50-50, certainly for the Livermore properties, all the previous ones.
so the $1 million in 8 and 18 was split 50-50 between the city of Livermore and this committee.
Right. The Newland 137 is about 55% by this committee and 45% by Livermore, but otherwise,
Okay,
it's been 50-50 in most cases. Any further questions?
oh, go ahead.
So I just have two questions. One is normally there's ongoing maintenance costs that are also affiliated with the purchase price. I see no maintenance cost. How are you going to address the maintenance of this parcel in perpetuity?
Right. So, we haven't included maintenance costs in the particular purchase price, as you noted. And we do have other open space funds that we can expend for maintenance. And ultimately, the goal is to place open space easements, which then in and of themselves can help fund maintenance operations on the property.
Okay. And before I have my second question, I just wanted to inform Councilmember Nyberg, the reason I wanted to have them all listed is so we could do that cross-analysis and data analysis and other questions, analyzing them side by side. So that was my goal, and I'm sorry I didn't articulate that well enough for you. So my second question to the city is, has there been another active buyer to partner with either this committee or on their own to save that land in the past?
Good question.
Is doing it for this property or other properties?
This parcel in particular. I can only speak to this one because this is the item that we're on.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any other potential buyers. We've just worked exclusively with the property owner to negotiate the sales price and purchase.
Okay. I don't have any more questions or comments. Does any member of the committee?
Yeah.
First.
The Tri-Valley Conservancy buys properties through grants that they attain, and then puts an easement on that property to make sure it stays as open space in perpetuity. Have you contacted Tri-Valley Conservancy and tried to get them involved in this purchase of the Hartford Hills?
Not in the upfront process, but it is common for the city to reach out to partner agencies once we've acquired parcels for long-term maintenance and open space conservation.
I guess one of the background question to that is, the city is saying it's going to buy it for open space preservation. A future city council and mayor decides, well, it's right next to Springtown, let's build homes.
Exactly.
What is the guarantee in writing that this will stay as in perpetuity as open space, because you don't have to go to the Tri-Valley Conservancy once you purchase it. You can-
Sorry, I was just going to make a point. May I? These are subject to grant agreements.
Pardon?
Any grant that is, that this committee approves and that is, then subsequently goes through the concurrence process and is finally approved, is subject to a grant agreement, which requires the property to be preserved for, to be subject to be used only for open space purposes. If not, the money is to be returned.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, the city could purchase this with our help, decide to make it into homes, and give this committee back the $980,000, is that correct?
If the city does not abide by the terms of the grant agreement requires return of the funds. There are different approaches to how grant agreements can be structured, such as recordation and other tools. Historically, our grant agreement, because we work with so many public agencies, typically just requires a covenant that endures beyond the termination of the agreement, that the property will be maintained for open space. If it is not, the funds are to be returned to the community.
So is this property in Measure D territory or land, however you want to refer it?
So I don't, is this Measure D?
Yes, Measure D.
I was going to say further too, it is beyond the city's urban growth boundary. And so we can't extend any services beyond that line. And in order to do so, we take a vote of the people. So any type of urban development on the property is infeasible unless and until the urban growth boundary is changed.
By vote of the residents. So it's outside our city boundary and our urban growth boundary, and the general plan for that is open space. So all those things would have to change to allow any sort of development.
Including the general plan.
Yes.
Well, in Measure D, correct? Is what Measure D would have to be. Because right now, you can do one home on his 82 acres or her 82 acres, you can do one home and an ADU or a caretaker unit. That's it, right?
Correct, that's what you can do now.
Okay. Is there any further questions from the committee? Yes, please.
Actually, I have a question about the other source of funds. It says it's the City of Livermore Open Space Funds. Could you tell us a little more about those funds? Are those related to mitigation fees or?
Yeah. So generally we've got sort of two buckets in that area, and most of the funds are the transferable development credit program, and then we also have some additional funds from easements that we sell.
Okay, so this particular property would not be used for mitigation, is that correct? It's just, would be using the fees paid to purchase?
Yeah, so at this time, that's the intent. I think in the future, depending on the habitat value there, the city could sell conservation easements on the property.
I believe there was a transaction in the past that was similar to this, where the city did end up selling conservation easements on a property, and in that case, I believe the city returned the money to the committee. Is that correct?
I don't know of that transaction in particular, but there is a requirement in the settlement agreement that the funds not be used to acquire property where it is to be a condition of approval. So anything that you're doing for mitigation that's required as a condition of project approval would not be a suitable use for these funds.
Yeah, so at this time, the intent is to purchase the property. There are no projects associated with the property.
Any further questions or comments?
Do you have the ability to put up the slides again for this, specifically the one that shows the T6 trail?
Second to the last slide. Yeah.
No?
Yep. Is it possible to make it bigger? Yep.
They go to projection mode already.
Thank you.
There you go.
My understanding, you're saying that this has recreational value because of the T6 trail. But the T6 trail, when the city took us out there a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe before COVID actually. The T6 trail could start and we talked about it starting on that lower, right about where the S is in Springtown. I forget the name of the street.
Redwood.
Redwood?
Yeah.
So one of the original plans to have T6 would start at Redwood, completely missing the parcel that you're asking us to help you purchase, going through an area where the developer has already said he wants to put in the T6 trail. So the T6 trail could go in without us purchasing that land right there.
Yes, it can.
And if that happens, then there's no recreational value specifically that's unique to this property except to extend the T6 trail to even farther up near the end of Springtown. Is that correct?
So in the report, we've included kind of the scoring from the committee's land conservation prioritization tool. And it scores, 96 to 97% on visual non-motorized recreational value. And so that was the other kind of benchmark we were using to identify that this property has recreational value. Again, its proximity to, city boundary and general ease of access, I think, had added to that.
Again, just to reiterate what Jake said before, it is our adopted active transportation plan, so it is the city's plan to ultimately build the T6 trail unless we amend our plan. That is still one of the goals for that trail system, is to have that right built. And as you said, once we have the property that can maybe have a recreate that hasn't happened yet.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Does the scoring tool require assumptions on your part, or are they built into the tool? Like, I assume it's a piece of software, you give some inputs and scores come out?
Yeah. So I don't know the methodology behind scoring tool, but there.
Yeah, that's right.
Sounds cool.
Totally new developed.
But you have to come up with, let me ask, do you have to come up with your own assumptions to input at the beginning?
No, so we simply access the map and click on the parcel.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the score. Come.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Do we have public comment cards?
We have public comment cards in the front.
I mean, on the side.
Yeah. I don't know. I was gonna open up to the public.
Yeah, right. I just want
So if there's anyone that wishes to speak from the public, please fill out a speaker card, turn it into the clerk, and you'll be allowed 3 minutes to address the body on this issue, item number 4. So you want to call who's first up? We'll go to in-person first, and then we'll go to online.
Is item number 4?
Item number 4.
Doug Mann.
Doug Mann, Citizens for Balanced Growth Secretary. This is an excellent example of a worthwhile open space acquisition. The criteria match is obvious, and the price seems fair. The problem is the city of Livermore demands to be the owner. On January 25th, 2 Native American organizations sent letters to Livermore requesting that they be given equal consideration for ownership of any land transactions involving environmental preservation on historic allotted land. We asked Livermore soon after for an update on whether Livermore had made contact in preparation for the due consideration. They have not. The financial component of the application relies on Livermore open space funds. We believe this is a typographical error. Livermore contacted CBG a while ago about eventually using Doherty funds as a source for this purchase. If so, it is too confidently presented as a given. More accurately, it is just potential. as they have not completed their obligations under the settlement at this time. There is no guarantee that they will do so adequately to complete the transaction. If they attempt to draw the fund anyway, they will be in material breach of the agreement, which will not only bring Livermore back into court, but potentially involve Zone 7, DSRSD, and ACFCWCD, Alameda County Water Department. Livermore's role is to manage the city. When an adjunct activity like county property environmental stewardship has no better option, the city can step in. What they should not do is abuse the grant process in a swiftly orchestrated land grab, knowing full well that better suited owners may exist. We urge you to deny this grant with the expectation that it will come back to you soon, possibly under modified ownership terms. And I would like to add, that's the end of my board approved comments, but thank you, Member First, for that question on the permanence. That's been a question that we have been asking about our fund, how permanent is this? And I'm very happy to have had your important information on that. I presume you're the attorney, and it makes me uncomfortable. And there's a whole lot that we are going to be doing to make sure that our grant funds that have gone out in the past are permanent for those properties, absolutely permanent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Kelly Douglas?
I promise to keep it 3 minutes. Members of the board and you, young lady, you're amazing. I've been to several city council and city meetings for San Joaquin County, for Altamont County, and other areas. And you genuinely have a vested interest and are asking brilliant, intelligent questions instead of just taking what they give you, which is your job. You're doing what you guys need to do. But I just want to say one quick little thing. This land is already great where it is, and there are other people who are interested in actually in all of these properties. And like you said, which I did not know, they would give the money back. But do they give it back with interest? Do they give it back with the same sense of integrity that the property had before it was borrowed? You guys have the ability to say no. And you're asking great questions, Mr. Wilson, Mr. First. You're asking amazing questions. But I want to challenge the people that just recently, back in the 70s and 80s, it's not that long ago, who said, we don't have enough trees out there for the bags, so we want to start using plastic bags. Remember, we all used to have grocery bags, but didn't have to pay for them? Our grocery stores had to. But they needed money. There was a hidden agenda, so they went with plastic bags. And now my ranch, which is on the Altamont, I was inundated with them. It was horrible. But after a little bit of time and then blown against, they disintegrated into nothing, which was great. But then somebody got the bright hidden idea, let's get some more money. So they started charging all of us. Try being there at Thanksgiving and buying your groceries and not having the bags. So they made these bags bigger and thicker. And all under the pretense that it was going to be fantastic. We're going to clear out our landfills. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. It just came to notice that our landfills had 4 million pounds in the past of plastic. And last week they announced there's now 8 million. We're being taxed for our landfills. Isn't that something with more plastic than ever before? So now they want to ban them all together. We do things in extreme instead of just saying, no, let's think it out. And with every one of these things, you guys have beautiful questions. There's no reason, because that land has all stayed there and been fine, and it's going to be there if you're meant to have it, because in the end, it's all about God. So that land's going to be there in the future. You can say no. You can say, let's just revisit this. Let's put it on an agenda for 90 days from now. And let's see these other companies that want to come in and buy this land for good reasons, good intentions that won't cost the taxpayers dollars. Let's stand up for one time for the land, for your future, for the legacies that you leave while you're here in office, while you're trying to make a difference. I am just astounded at the level of intelligence in this room and the level of good heart. And I hope that all of you guys in the end, when you sit there and look at all of this, that you'll just say, you know what, we'll put this on an agenda, let's get a little more information, let's make a really wise decision, because right now, the economy doesn't bear just spending money for nothing. And it doesn't bear. Right now, your money's sitting, 21 million, it's sitting there earning some interest. It's earning better interest than it ever earned 10 years before. It's earning far more. And then you want to go out and spend it and hope that somebody else is going to buy it, pieces of it up? Do you really want to sell it to a battery plant that's going to drive people out, cause toxicity and problems? Do you want to sell it to anything else? And then you say the magic word, conservation.
Thank you, Kelly.
But there's no proof.
The time expired. Thank you.
There's no proof of that when you put it in writing.
Next speaker.
Dick Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Shawn.
So I'm Dick Schneider, and I've got a point to make about all 4 of the grant proposals. I'll speak to this one, but it carries forward to all of them. I want to put them all in perspective. There are 271 acres for all 4 of the grants, less than 300 acres. The total cost of this committee's share is $3,680,000, 18% of the money that's in the account now. So less than 300 acres will absorb 1/6 of the amount of money that's there. The cost per acre, there was a cost per acre for this grant, but on the other 3, I don't believe the cost per acre is in the application. They're all over, well, one is under 17,000 per acre, but the others are in the 20s and in the 30,000s per acre. What the committee does today, if it accepts some of these, is going to set a precedent for this committee's future work. So the 271 acres that are being talked about today may very well set a precedent for how much money that this committee has to spend in the future. And there's some, I don't know, Shawn, you probably know better than I do, 315,000 acres in East County where we can spend the money, where the committee can spend the money. Have to think about what this precedent is going to be just in terms of the money. I do also have a question about the recreation uses of the property. I did see the trail alignment. Recreation is the second priority for the use of the open space funds. The primary priority is habitat, native biological diversity. Recreation and protection of biodiversity sometimes are in conflict. When you get at people out on the, people riding their bikes, if people are not around, some people go off off the trail. And so I'm wondering, how is this land going to be policed, if you will, to prevent those kinds of misuse of the recreational value that will harm the biological value? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Next speaker.
June King?
Can I just stand here? Not go to the front?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I am Jean King. I would like to say, I think you can probably all hear me. I have a little bit of trouble hearing the attorney. She could possibly speak a little bit louder for me. Did I understand you to say that if the money goes to this property and then they don't keep it for open space, then all they have to do is give back the amount of money to this committee and they can maybe not keep it for open space? Or did I misunderstand that?
There is a condition of the grant agreement that requires that this acquisition be used to fund properties that will be maintained for open space. If they breach the agreement, then we have all remedies available at law, and the agreement provides that they must return the money.
So suppose, this is very close to the city's urban growth boundary. Suppose the city decides they really want to expand out and bring it in there and have it for urban growth. All they have to do is return the money that they got from you and they can do whatever they want with that property?
As the city planners said, there are other obstacles to doing that don't have to do with the grant agreement, but the grant agreement requires that the funding from this body be used to fund property that will be held in perpetuity for open space.
They might get sued, maybe. So, okay, I'm just a little bit worried about it since it is next to the urban growth boundary. And so what I think might be a good idea is to require maybe a conservation easement to be put on these properties. That's just a thought by TBC or something like that, to guarantee that it will be open space. So that may not be possible. That's just my thought that's going in my little head. Okay, the other thing is, ask the city, isn't there another piece of property that's out there in that same area that's owned by the city? I understood there was one. I think I took a tour of it one time with TVC and said, here is some property that's out there someplace. And we looked at it, and it's been, if this is true, and maybe I'm incorrect, if this is true, that is not being managed well by the city as far as I can see. It's being allowed for people to use off-road vehicles on it, and it's not keeping the habitat there. And so I think it's very important that we make sure that the habitat is preserved by the city, and I'm not sure the city is taking care of that other property, but I may be wrong, and I would just like that cleared up. And so with off-road vehicles and things like that, that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more speakers in person?
Brian Sheehan?
Brian?
Mine's on the next one, but I'll speak because it all is relevant. So thanks for having this. My name is Brian Sheehan. I'm a resident of Livermore. I represent multiple properties in Alameda County, Livermore, as well as religious institutions. So I'm representing a lot of different people here. We're all against how this process went is what we're really concerned with today. I'm specifically for the cross on the hill, but it stands for this property as well. There are buyers. You've heard it from Kelly and many other people. There are many people that are seeking these properties, and it would still stay as farmland and as it is today because none of it's buildable per the urban growth boundaries. What you guys are trying to set is a precedent saying, hey, we want to preserve it as a city. Well, that takes the ability for me to maybe buy the property out, or if some of my friends to buy the property, and I have good intentions of the property that I manage. So with that being said, we'd like to see at least a month's time. When I saw the property, I had a week to respond to this, so that's not proper time. Brown Act, what's the time frame on that?
24 hours.
24 hours, wow. That's government working for you. You guys are working for the government. Please represent your people well. 24 hours doesn't work for me. I have a 24, 48 hour shift. I wouldn't be able to be here. Thank God I am. I'm speaking to you guys, asking you, give this proper time to have it done correctly, have more people here. This whole room, you're gonna need a bigger venue the next one, okay?
No idea.
So we're representing so many people here, and you're only seeing a few faces, but there are thousands behind every face that's here. And we're all the voters, so I don't know what seat you guys sit on, how I can vote you in or out, but trust me, as you guys cross people or help people in the community, that's how you keep your seats. So right now I'm against how it sits. Don't like the government taking over any more property that me and my friends can buy and manage as farm, open space, the Livermore in the valley, in the community that we live in. I lived on the corner of Merdell and Alden Lane growing up. That is 5 acres of farmland that I grew up on, wiped out. Can't see my house no more, wouldn't even know what it looked like. Think of Ruby Hills. Okay, this is all how it all starts. The city takes on some, they say the intentions are good, zero growth boundary, nothing's gonna happen. Here comes a shopping mall, here comes a battery plant, here comes my cross. Jesus saves, gone. Millions of people see that every year. And I'm gonna speak about that when the cross comes up. That's why I'm really here, but I'm here vested for everybody that's speaking for all these different properties. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this process. So,
next speaker in person?
Bill Turnquist.
What's that?
Bill Turnquist.
I'm with the cross only. So when we get to the cross.
speak now and then speak again.
So anyone on number 4?
We're doing number 4.
Anybody online?
You do have a raised hand online.
Please let them know.
Carol, you can go ahead.
Hi, I'm Carol Silva. I'm an alternate to the Sierra Club representative to this committee, but I am speaking on behalf as a member of the public. In addition to being a member of the public, my residence is on Ponderosa Drive, which is located towards the end of the paved path. And I want to speak about a couple of different issues. One issue is that ever since the beginning of COVID, there are lots of people that walk on the paved path. A lot of them sing way out loud. Some of them have electric bikes, and they have radios or whatever electronic devices attached to them. A lot of people have cell phones, and they talk extremely loudly. And because my resident is towards the end of the paved path, and the arroyo, it has a nice white spot, people just stand there, and they can talk and they can sing for hours, and I'm not kidding you. Anyway, but the real reason is I think this process is going way too fast, especially when I consider the our ranch conservation easement, where there's the fiddleneck plant that is, we went ahead and everything's been approved for the conservation easement, but there were several meetings on that. And yet all of a sudden this springs up as a special meeting with very little notice in regards to what's on the agenda. So I'm sorry, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Why I'm talking about the paved path is because of my concern for habitat. Not only is there the noise factor that ends up scurrying out egrets and blue herons, but there's also a lot of people that feed ducks bread. Well, that's not good for ducks. And it's just real disheartening because it causes them to be ill if they eat so much of it, and they could die. Anyway, the other reason I'm saying slow down is because of the indigenous community. They should have a voice in this. You know, the Europeans, etc., colonized this land and created land ownership when it was the tribes that were here moving from one area to another. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else online?
There are no other raised hands.
I'll bring it back to the committee. Did city staff want to say anything, or?
Yeah, I think if I could ask Andy Ross, one of our staff at the city in the Economic Development Department, to talk. He also has two hats. He also is a big part of our open space program. I'd like to see if Andy could talk a little bit about the management of a couple of our properties and generally how we approach management. If you wouldn't mind, Andy?
That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
just fill out a speaker card.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
So there was some questions about city holdings near this site. I think Ms. King brought it up. City owns about 300 acres in the Springtown area. And she's right, there was a few tours, there was noticeable management issues. And so city staff, as part of the open space program, worked with TVC to encumber that area or some of that area with an easement. We looked for outside funders to help fund an endowment so that there's money there to manage that property in perpetuity. And I think it's our intention, I'll let Mr. Potter speak to that, to do something similar with this property, that if it was owned by the city, we'd work with our partners, such as TVC, to look for outside funders, to, as Chairperson Wilson said, bring in money to help fund the long-term management. And a little bit of history, I think it was brought up that there was an acquisition that was funded by this committee for one of the Doolin properties that the city owns. It's there's two properties that the city owns. There's the southernmost one. It's about 100 acres, give or take. It's also adjacent to the city limits and urban growth boundary. And as part of that grant agreement, and maybe Dick can speak to this too, it was fully funded, and if the city were to get an easement or an outside party to help manage it, the city would refund half the money or a portion of the money. And I believe that transaction happened. So in the long term, the first step is to acquire property, then we work with our partners to enhance the resources and restore them, and then preserve them through conservation easement for the long term. That's kind of the order of operations. Happy to answer any other questions the committee might have.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
You know, I just wonder, conservation easement has been mentioned several times. Is it the intent to then have a conservation easement on this property?
Yes.
So in perpetuity, would really mean in perpetuity in that case?
Yes.
No possibility of breaking the grant agreement?
That's the intent.
I can say from, I've been at the city for close to 25 years. We've never unwound a conservation easement. We've never built, suburban development on a conservation easement. We hold them long-term, hopefully for perpetuity. That's the way they're set up. That's not been our intent for many years here. It's to hold them as open space, and that's what we've done. We have a really long track record, actually. Again, going back 25 plus years in South Livermore and more recently North Livermore, holding easements and keeping them as open space and managing them with partners. That's their specialty. Sometimes we're kind of a silent second partner. So we find the right folks to partner with to manage these properties. So again, I hope our track record speaks for itself. We have not unwound any of these conservation easements. So in case folks are concerned about that. Again, it's really important to reemphasize these easements are outside of the city's urban growth boundary. Even if the city staff, for example, want to do something, it's not our call. It's outside the urban growth boundary. It takes a vote of the people to extend services to these areas for development to even be considered. And that's a huge, heavy lift, as you know. So those urban growth boundaries, at least some of them, have not been changed. So just want to reemphasize that.
Conservation easements also are a transaction in their own right, working with the land trust, and it takes some time, it takes some funding. The land trusts that usually hold those conservation easements, like the Tri-Valley Conservancy, they need resources to ensure proper stewardship and maintenance of the resources. So it takes a little bit of time to negotiate.
Thank you. Bring it back to the committee. Is there any more discussion?
I'm having a hard time comprehending what appears to be a straightforward, rational use of funds to purchase property for the purposes that we exist to do, and then the opposition or the consternation. I understand that the time frame involved, the concern about acting too quickly, moving too fast. I mean, I kind of get that, but I sense a lot of distrust of the city of Livermore, and you're not part of the city of Livermore. And I know of some of the issues that have been raised, but I by no means know all of them. But what's the no action alternative? I mean, if you don't get the grant at all, then what's the no action alternative? Someone else buys the property?
Indigenous people.
Yeah, I grapple with that same question. Council member, you shouldn't be so surprised by there being mistrust in government by the community, because that happens quite often. My concern is this. My concern is a process thing for me. I don't fault the city of Livermore. They did brief us that this was coming. But in all honesty, if there's an opportunity for another partner to partner with, or another person or entity that wants to contribute to buying this, and we can keep our powder dry, I certainly would like that to be fully vetted and looked at before we use our funds to do so, because like Dick was saying, we are and would be setting a precedent. We are spending a little more than what we would like to spend. But on the flip side, and what I grapple with, is we haven't had applications in a long time. We don't get a lot of people coming to us for funds. So I don't want to lose the opportunity to acquire this parcel in perpetuity as open space. I don't want to lose that. But I do think there's a question of process, and if there's more time that could be given, and we could continue for 45 days to 2 months to look at those options, I think that's a reasonable approach.
Amen.
Yes. I said share some of your concerns about the process, so I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah.
Bob or David.
Intelligent.
Because I haven't heard of there being an active buyer before, which is why I'm sort of singing from a different sheet of music than I would perhaps be singing from. But that's new information that we just received, and I think it should be fully vetted, is all I'm saying.
Well, I'm not sure, the letters that they wrote didn't suggest that they were going to put any money to purchase this, right? And I think the process is, to your point, the process is for us to, for the city to, or a city to acquire the property as we're suggesting here, and then looking for partners to help manage it. And I think the city of Livermore is committed to reaching out to those indigenous tribes, for example, and others, to form this partnership so that the land can be preserved in perpetuity. The other thing I want to get back to your point is we've been grappling as a committee ever since I've been on, and way before that, because you can see that the last time that we made any significant purchase was 6 years ago. And we've been grappling with how to spend this $20+ million that's sitting in the east side bank account, if you will, to purchase property for exactly the purpose that the city of Livermore is bringing to us today. And frankly, I don't know what more we would learn in the next 45 or 60 days that we don't know today. And so I don't see any reason why we shouldn't move forward with this. I think the guardrails in place to maintain this in perpetuity as open space are there. I mean, Mr. Riley has mentioned several times that it would take a vote of the people to extend the urban growth boundary.
You're planning one.
Sorry,
Bob, you're planning one. Go ahead.
Doug, I don't need you interrupting me. Thank you. It would take a vote of the people to change the urban growth boundary, and I don't think anybody has any expectation that we would go down that road on this. I think, wasn't there, I thought that there was, the owner of this property, I thought, had looked for a developer to whom to sell it. Is that true? I thought I remember somebody from staff telling me that.
Yeah, good. The owner did approach the city about annexation and development.
And we said?
We said no because of the reasons Mr. Potter said.
Right.
And at that point, the question was raised with the city wanting to buy for open space.
Yeah, so I mean, the owner of the property is trying to come up with other ways to divest. I think that's the point is the owner of this is, as I understand it, is getting on in age. He or she is looking to divest some of their holdings, and so they came to the city to see if we'd be interested. So to me, it makes perfect sense, given that we've worked hard, this committee has worked hard to advertise, we have this money to purchase land for open space. Somebody has come to us, I guess coincidentally as much as anything, serendipitously, I suppose, to purchase this, and I think it's the right time, and I don't see waiting is going to add any more information. I'm absolutely committed to have the city continue to look for partners if and when this is purchased. So I'm very much in favor of approving this today.
Spend money just what you got.
Mr. First.
I'm really a mixed mind. I'm really a mixed mind on this because on one hand, as a trails advocate, I'm really interested in T6. But taking a close look at this, if you start that T6 at Redwood, then you don't need this property in order to build T6. And there is some suspicion. Gene King mentioned it specifically, but there is some worry by the people that are interested in preserving these areas as open space in perpetuity, that the city potentially could buy this land with our help, decide to sell it to a developer, break the urban growth boundary, sell it to a developer who would easily give back $980,000, and then we would expand the housing that, I'll speak for myself, that I would never want to see. So I don't know how I'm going to vote, frankly, because there is a worry that the city has other ideas, and the city, as explained, could then sell this land, give back the money, and we would be in a real pickle. And T6 is not dependent on this purchase. So I'm not sure where I'm going with it.
Well, at some point during the meeting, I'm gonna need a motion. But I don't feel the level of distrust. I just feel for me, and just so you know, I just feel that if there's other options out there, I would feel more comfortable if they were fully vetted before this body took action. That's what I'm saying. And if they come back in a month and you just look at me and say, we reached out, we had no willing partner or buyer, I'd be much more confident and comfortable in voting in favor of this. But as of now, I'm not there. And I didn't come here thinking that either. So.
Thank you, Jesus.
So, let me ask you a question. The fact that there have to be a vote of people to lift the urban growth boundary, is that?
To break it, yes.
To break it, does that factor into what you were just saying?
Well, again, we get into the politics that I raised in the beginning that Liz reminded me is not part of our discussion here.
Right.
But you may not realize that the city is interested in annexing 1,000+ acres east of Greenville and breaking the urban growth boundary and annexing that area to the city. So.
But that's not true. The city is not interested in one way or another. The planning commission, the GPAC asked the city to think about that. And all the city has done is ask for an EIR, and it will be taken if we decide it could be put on the ballot in some future date, not even this November.
So
But it'd have to be it would have to be the council that would approve that to put it on the ballot.
Okay, my apologies, I misspoke on that. I guess I was taking it from the very suspicious side of things, but I appreciate your correction, and I will correct what I'm saying from now on.
Question for staff, since I'm on the west side, do I get to vote on this item?
No, it would be the county, Sierra Club and City of Livermore.
Okay. Recused. Recused on all four, right?
I matched this up.
You didn't know that?
What?
You said your input's important, but
Right.
you don't get to vote.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the sale of this, or the purchase of this property.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? So I'd like to entertain a substitute motion that we table this for 30 days and ask staff to look at other options and bring us back at our March meeting, and we can make the determination at that point in time. Unless I'm hearing that there's a sense of urgency from the seller, or the buyer, or the seller rather. I know that these sellers get a little antsy when they're dealing with local governments. I'm dealing with a purchase on Mines Road to build the first, or create the first SUD in East County. And we've been battling the state on the Williamson Act for over 6 months. And thank goodness the seller is patiently waiting. Otherwise, I would have lost that property and the opportunity to have an SUD out here. So as long as the seller is not getting antsy, then I would appreciate my substitute motion to be looked at. Seconded.
I would second that.
So roll call vote?
Councilmember Nybert? I'm sorry, you're not voting. Just said that. Member First?
Aye.
Member Carling?
No.
And Chair Wilson.
Aye.
So motion passes 2-1.
So that brings us to item number 5. 5 minutes to 2, almost 2. So item number 5 is a presentation for 125 acres at Greenville Road. Jake, I'm sorry, to begin, or is that?
Camp.
Okay.
Should we go to 6 instead of 10?
Go to 6?
6 crossroad.
Wait a minute, are we gonna get through the 2 things?
We're not going to get through all of them. I cross my fingers with you.
Well, I mean, look, let's do 7. Can we do item number 7?
7 is Garaventa Hill.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that we need to get through today, and then we'll go back to 6. So can we do number 7? Because the city needs to hear back from us on that.
Yes.
So number 7 is the presentation and consideration of $440,000 grant for the Garaventa Hills parcel at Bear Creek Drive, if I'm not mistaken.
So that'll be me, Chair Wilson, presenting. I did want to make sure my audience is aware, that board members, we do have handouts for that as well, including our PowerPoint. We came in a little bit late, sorry, we had to copy that from and do a little process. So I want to make sure everybody sees that. We have letters from the property owner and our PowerPoint. So I was going to really quickly make sure that the committee also has that. And again, the public is up here as well. Yeah, so we have a little copy and stuff. Here. So yeah, we just want to make sure everybody has that. Okay. So I'll go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Steve Riley. I'm actually the acting planning manager of the city of Livermore. So somebody promoted me here on the slide.
Good. Sorry.
So good afternoon, Chair Wilson and members of the committee. This is a unique grant application, so we'll try to get through it quick, but it's a little different. As you recall, Steve Stewart, our former planning manager, summarized the committee's acquisition criteria and provided the status of the Garaventa property back in your September meeting, and updated you on Livermore's acquisition activities, which you've seen some of them today. Next slide, please. The 32-acre site. Oops, can you go back one slide? Sorry, thank you. So just this gives you the big context. The 32-acre site is outlined there in blue, kind of at the north end of the city, near, kind of between Vasco Road and Laughlin Road. And it's adjacent to the Altamont Creek School and the Altamont Creek Park, which is just to the south. And of course it lies north of I-580 there in the middle of the city. And as you'll note, what's different about this property is in the city's urban growth boundary, it's not outside. So the city's urban growth boundary and city boundary is represented by that sort of pink line. So it's inside the city. Okay, next slide, please. So here's a close-up view of that same map. This image includes the city's boundary in pink and the North Livermore urban growth boundary in the dotted line. So they're coterminous here in this area. This image includes the city's general plan designations, which is UL1, that stands for urban low residential, which is 1 to 1.5 dwelling units per acre. The property is adjacent to the Garaventa Wetlands Reserve, which is just to the left of the property in the OSP designation, and which is owned and managed by the Livermore Area Parks and Recreation District. You can see sort of the informal trails that are worn into the Garaventa property already from folks accessing the site. I myself was out there recently and had a number of young kids biking by me right on the top of the hill there. Next slide, please. So you have some photos of the site. Here are 3 images from different vantage points, including the end of Bear Creek Drive looking west. Looking north from Altamont Creek Park and looking directly west from North Vasco Road. The dashed lines outline the 2 knolls on the property. As Steve mentioned, in September, the site has an extensive history that we won't go into detail for now, but going back to 2019, the Livermore City Council approved a 44-unit single-family subdivision on the site. Later in 2019, Save the Hill Group filed a lawsuit challenging the environmental impact report certification and approval of the project. The Superior Court denied the group's challenge. Save the Hill Group appealed, and in 2022, the Court of Appeal reversed the Superior Court's decision. The appellate court ruled that the no project alternative, the EAR, should have considered preserving the project site as open space instead of developing it, using potential funding from the Altamont Landfill Open Space Committee and open space funds in the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement. The project applicant, Lafferty Communities, and the property owners for the Garaventa property have exercised their right to modify the environmental impact report and bring the project back for review by the city. Consistent with the court's findings, the no project alternative analysis in the EIR will be modified to evaluate the potential of preserving the site as open space with funds from the Altamont Landfill Open Space Committee and from the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement Fund. In response to the appellate court's ruling, the city presents this application to address the deficiencies in the EIR prepared for the 44-unit residential development proposed on the property. In other words, we're required to seek funding from this committee as well as the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement to preserve this site as open space per the judge's order. Next slide, please. You'll see the Open Space Committee's funding criteria, the two criteria that are in agreement. So that's just a quick review for things that you already know. So next slide. So based on that funding criteria from the Altamont Open Space Committee on the previous slide, we did our analysis. There are documented occurrences of California tiger salamander and California red-legged frog nearby, and the site consists of non-native grasslands that has the potential to serve as dispersal and/or estivation habitat for both species. Bird owls were observed on or nearby the site in the past, and they are expected to forage and nest on the site. And you see some of the occurrences around the sites right there in the middle, and some of the occurrences are in those hashed circles. Next slide, please. The seasonal wetland, which is 0.004 acres in the western portion of the project, which is shown on this slide, is potentially suitable habitat for vernal pool fairy shrimp. Because the fairy shrimp occur in alkaline pools of varying depths that are recorded, there are recorded occurrences of the species nearby, and the property lies within the designated critical habitat of the fairy shrimp. The wetland is likely the result of a hole dug to create a dirt bike jump. Next slide, please. So here's another close-up of the site. Again, you note that there's suburban development to the south, across the creek, as well as the school to the right of that. The site includes a couple of knolls with varying elevations between approximately 537 and 607 feet above mean sea level. It is visible to a smaller, more localized area of the surrounding homes from Altamont Creek Park and from Vasco Road. The property has a 0.24 rating from U-Shed on the committee's mapping tool. The private property does not have formal public trails, but again, the public does access the site, has worn informal trails across the site, which is likely to result in a 1.0 recreation rating on the mapping tool. Next slide, please. And of course, you see the funding criteria, the first two that are in the agreement, and then the additional criteria that's been adopted by the committee itself. So I'm going to address these next three criteria, 3 through 5. First of all, regarding strategic value and land protection. The property is within the City of Livermore, North Livermore urban growth boundary, and within the city boundary. The city typically seeks to strengthen the urban growth boundary by acquiring properties beyond the boundary to control and stabilize the land use. According to the mapping tool, this property is not within the top 100 parcels for land conservation and prioritization. However, the property is directly north of Altamont Creek and east of the Garaventa Wetlands Preserve, owned and managed by LARPD. So the property would be strategic in terms of its adjacency to the Garaventa Wetlands Preserve and the parcels to the north where drainage flows to the greater Springtown Alkali Preserve. The subject property gets a 0 in the 3 connectivity categories from the mapping tool. The next criteria, additional funding sources. City staff would meet and confer with Citizens for Balanced Growth to utilize open space funds from the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement to contribute half of the acquisition and transaction costs, approximately $440,000, The use of the Doherty Valley Open Space Funds is subject to review and approval by the Livermore City Council. And then the third criteria, number 5 up there, willing sellers. The owners are not willing to sell the property to the city for open space values or discuss the sale of the property for residential value because they are currently in contract with Lafferty Communities. We provided, I just passed those out and they're here for the public. We provided copies of these letters that were recently sent to the owners asking if they are willing to sell the property to the city, first for open space values, and then secondly, if they're interested in selling it to us for suburban residential values, which are much higher, based on the zoning for the area. In both cases, they responded with, in writing that they are not willing to sell it to the city of Livermore at this time, and they're under contract with Lafferty and want to pursue that suburban development project that was approved once already. The criteria listed on this slide are the same criteria included in the committee's standard grant application for acquisition of open space land. To date, all of the open space acquisitions utilizing Altamont Settlement funding have met all 5 of these criteria, including willing seller. Next slide, please. We're almost done. This slide includes the proposed funding breakdown for acquiring environmental property at open space value. Based on the 5 criteria used by the committee to determine whether to contribute towards the acquisition of the property, which includes a willing seller, the property does not appear to be eligible for funding from the Altamont Open Space Fund. The question before the committee is whether to contribute $440,000 based on the open space value or higher value based on a residential fair market value, which we estimate to be $15 to $25 million. We did not have an appraisal done, but based on our own experience with residential projects and values and conferring with some brokers in the community, we have that range for this property as what it would cost at suburban residential fair market value. Thanks, and our team is available for any questions the committee may have. So it's a little unusual. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from members of the committee?
So just to confirm, we did send a letter to the trust asking if they would accept the development appraised price for the property, and they turned us down.
Yes, we had sent, again, there's 2 letters that we sent that asked for open space value, and second, they said they're not interested in secondly. Are they interested in talking to us about selling it at fair market value? And they said, no, we are not. We didn't give a price for the second letter because we had to have an appraisal. But, yes.
Anyone else?
Yeah, no questions.
Wait.
First?
Yeah. In your grant proposal as listed by the county website, under grant summary, it says the grant application is for permanent open space preservation. But right now it's zoned it's zoned residential. Does that mean the city has the intention of rezoning it from residential into open space?
So this is just the first step of what would be a long process. If they wanted to sell it to the city, and in that case, we would talk to them about open space, long-term open space. Yes, there'd be a number of things that would have to be done. I can't speak for the city council. They have to make, if, for example, the general plan was changed to be open space instead of residential, that would have to be done through a city council action to change that. As well as the zoning would have to be changed to some sort of open space zone. So, yeah, there's a number of steps that would have to happen to.
So my basic question is that right now it's zoned as residential potential, and now you're saying 15 to 25 million. If this funding if our committee and Doherty Valley and the city got together and raised the 15 or 20 million dollars to purchase it, if they were willing sellers, which they're not, but if they were willing sellers to sell it to us at fair market value, and we were all able to raise the 16, say $20 million, would the city be willing to rezone it as open space, where the value of that land would go from 16 to 20 million down to $1 million plus? Or is the city going to say that's not good use of taxpayer money? We just bought it for 15 million. We want to develop it, which goes against the whole rationale for this committee to help fund it.
I think that'd be up to the city council. City council is the body that would change the zoning.
I guess I'm sort of asking in a roundabout way, is the city willing to change the zoning if the grant application says it's for permanent open space preservation?
I don't know how you can predict the future.
Are you asking, so, just a little perspective, the way, again, what we're doing here is we are following the direction of the court as to what steps we have to take to ensure that we have legitimately pursued using this land as permanent open, or pursuing it as permanent open space. And again, we're been directed to go to both this committee and the Doherty Valley Settlement Committee to ask that question. From the staff's perspective, we think our open space money can go much further in other acquisitions because the cost of this land is, again, at suburban values right now. That's what we would have to pay, the 15 to 25 million. And again, even that, they're not interested. So if in fact it does, if they are willing to sell, yeah, we go through a lot of steps. And this would just be the start of many steps after that. But they're not a willing seller, so I guess we want to make sure the committee's keenly aware of that. And if they would want to change sort of the past practice of always having a willing seller.
Yeah.
First of all, for total transparency, I'm a director of the Livermore Area Recreation and Park District, and we own the Garaventa wetlands immediately west of this area. I'm not speaking for the LARPD. The LARPD has never discussed this property, the Garaventa Hill. LARPD has never discussed it nor taken any position on it. I'm not representing the LARPD today, representing the Sierra Club, but people should know that I am a director of the Park District. Full transparency is that I have given money to Save the Hill to sue the city because of a variety of different issues, but you should know that I have already put my money where my mouth is.
Thank you.
My concern is,
I appreciate it.
My concern is that when the city lost this lawsuit, and you tell me if I'm going into the political side and I should stay quiet. When the city lost the lawsuit, they were told that they didn't include several options, including a no action option. And it seems to me that this grant request is now being brought to us, potentially not as a legitimate grant request, because you don't have a willing seller. But in order to fulfill the requirements of the court, to be able to say you did everything you wanted, the court wanted you to do, and now you can go ahead and approve Lafferty because you as the city have fulfilled the court's mandate. And I'm not sure that that's really a valid request to us.
Well, I appreciate that comment. Would they no more questions?
Very quick question.
Yes.
Maybe unrelated to this at all, but how is this property treated, if at all, in the new Livermore housing element?
Well, it's had suburban zoning for about 50 years, at least 50 years, actually, maybe longer. So it's assumed to be housing, like it has been for many, many years. And so, yeah, it's assumed to be housing in both our general plan and our zoning and our housing element.
No zoning changes whatsoever?
In
the last 50 years.
Well, I don't know if there's been any zoning changes. I think maybe density was changed once or twice many years ago, but generally it's been suburban zoning for over 50 years.
Thank you.
And also add to Mr. Lambert's question, I mean, this started at what, 80 units or 70 some units?
Yeah, it started at, I think it was 70 some units, and it's been reduced down to 44 units now.
75, 76, and now to 44.
Down to 44 units. So just for context, the process, the applicant, of course, has the right to ask to move that EIR and the project forward again. And the city has the obligation to process that application. So the applicant has said they would like to do that. So that is their right as the owner to revise the EIR per the judge's order and to then take that up as well as a new set of entitlements to the Planning Commission, City Council, who would make the ultimate decision. But again, they have the right, it's their property, and the city has the obligation to consider their application. And that's what they told us they'd like to do. Therefore, they said they are not willing sellers at this point.
Thank you. Well, any further questions? Is there any members of the community that are in attendance that would like to speak on item number 7? Please. I guess, Mr. Mann, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. I am not representing Citizens for Balanced Growth in my comments right here. The committee, the board felt it was not. You received my email. This is a farce application. They're not going to spend any of the fund, of this fund's money. Honestly, I sort of was thinking this was going to be at the end, and I was staying partly for entertainment values to see if Steve would be able to deliver this with a straight face, and I saw him cracking up a little bit. I thought it was close. I was kind of crying inside. Let me just say this, to make this very clear. Miramonte Hill is not going to be urbanized. They're compelled to do some things after the court told them they have to do some things. Their estimate of what they have to do is way off. This is going to be another years-long process. We're not going to be buying it anytime soon, as long as the developer is as delusional as they are, that they think they can make a successful project out of this. So now I'm going to put on my chief financial officer hat, which is my day job, and I'm going to say to myself, okay, what do they really need right now? Because we have to make a decision. So I don't want to take much more of your time. What do they really need right now, and what's best for you? And I think probably this is one case where what they need and what you need is probably about the same. If you grant this, then you're going to have a liability on your books for this until they spend it. And that'll, like I say, it's going to be years before this is all over, it'll go to court and all that stuff. If you deny it, they've still got what they need today because they came in time. And you get to keep it off the books. So that's what I recommend you do.
Thank you. Next speaker, is that Dick Schneider?
Yes.
Just to the floor.
Rob, you work to control the PowerPoint. Could you put the first slide up? Too late?
It's never happened before. I had a power failure.
Okay.
So
Which one do I go on?
it's not critical. The members of the committee have what I want to display. So my name's Dick Schneider. I'm going to echo what David first asked. Is this really a serious proposal? Or is this trying to get something done to check a box so that development can move forward? I don't think it is a serious proposal. The city has proposed spending $31,250 on the Cross property, which is a 32-acre parcel, not very far from this parcel. We're asking for $27,140 per acre for this property. The cross property is outside the urban growth boundary. It's designated, it's got a Williamson Act contract on it. It's not going to be developed. This is inside the urban growth boundary, planned unit development zoning. It should have, at a minimum, a higher value than what is in the proposal for $880,000. What I wanted to, there we go. This area here, this triangular area, triangle and the square next to it, is called the Farber property. This committee helped fund East Bay Regional Park District to acquire that Farber property in 2011. The Farber property also is inside the city's urban growth boundary, also planned unit development. And the project received $41,000 per acre. If $41,000 per acre were applied to the Garaventa Hill property, it would be equivalent to and if that was $41,000 in 2011 per acre. If you escalate the cost of money, the dollar value of the money now, which is about $1.36, for every dollar in 2011, you'd spend $1.36 now. This parcel would get a bid of $1,784,000 if it were equivalent to the Farber property in today's dollars. So at 32 acres. Now, if that were in this proposal, it might be a serious proposal. And perhaps the sellers might think at least that this was somewhat fair, but $880,000 to me is not reasonable. And of course, they're not going to answer. They're not going to do anything while they're in contract with the developer. But if they got a serious proposal, they might decide to hold out and wait till the contract expires.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Kelly? Livermore?
Yes.
And I know we do have one person online.
First, thank you very much, especially you who doesn't really get to vote on a whole lot of things. And you, Mr. Wilson, for showing great discretion. And you, Mr. Carling, in 6 years you haven't spent a lot of money. That's amazing in today's times. It's amazing. And I wouldn't be in this economy too anxious to hurry up and spend money. You're doing the right thing by waiting a few months to see who comes up and who's willing to preserve the very intention of what your heart is. Just because you have money doesn't mean you need to spend it. And I think you know that. And I think you guys have used tremendous discretion. I think with this particular property here, as well as the other ones, we also need to go to the Livermore board and get things clarified before we're willing to hand out more money. Get things made very, very clear. And then go after it. Because none of these properties anybody's really going hard after. They're not. They're going to be okay if they sit for a little while longer. Even just 90 days. It's not the end of the world. And I think that you planners have got a really hard job to do. Really hard job. You're walking a fine line. But at the end of the day, the legacy that you leave in your job, knowing that you've done a good job, you want it for us too, just like they do. And I thank you, all of you, very much for trying to do the right thing in the midst of also trying to do a job. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more in-person speakers? Go to online. Can I get it? You just fill out a card and turn it in after. So we'll go to Carol next.
Carol, you can go ahead. Hi, I'm Carol Silva, and I'm all for saving Garaventa Hills and the open space there. It's a very unique, biodiverse landscape there. But I agree with the previous speakers that this really is not enough money. It's not going to incentivize anything. And it's like it's just something that the city wants to say, okay, we made an offer and the landowners decided against it. So, yeah, I don't know how the motion is gonna be presented or how the votes are gonna go on this, but to me, it doesn't seem to be an adequate offer for the owners for Garavante property. And again, I do appreciate trying to save Garavante Hills, but the price tag doesn't seem like the city really is interested in saving Garavante. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Brady.
I will agree with all the people who are talking about the high economic value if you have land that can be developed into luxury suburban housing. It's very hard to compete with that, but this thing reminds me quite a bit of Cayetano Park in Livermore, which is next to Los Positos College. And if you go there and look up at those empty hills next to the park, it sounds like just like this, and there are people taking their little bikes up and down those dirt hills, and it's a fun place. Apparently, for the people are not just hanging out in the park down there; they're running up and down the rural hills, and they like that. It's very very nice, and I've personally been to that one. Then there's this idea of Williamson Act contracts. Williamson Act contracts are apparently a scam in Alameda County. There's a place in Palomares Creek, an unnamed tributary of Palomares Creek, which got erased. The creek doesn't exist on paper because it's the Watercourse Deed Protection Ordinance is what it is. And that creek then had an airstrip extension put into it. And now that airstrip extension got inspected by county inspectors. And all these pictures show you an industrial stockyard down there, run by a giant concrete contracting company, Williamson Act contract. Then over by the Sinol water treatment plant, the county has 9 or 16 acre parcel. That's at least 9 acres. And the owner, Williamson Act contract, an excavating company, they paved it with hard-packed gravel and piled it full of giant diameter sewage pipes, concrete sewage pipes for a couple of years, and now those are gone, but it's now still paved. So that's your Williamson Act contract protecting the land, the agricultural values of the land. Have been completely destroyed, at least in my mind, when you pave it and do these things. So Williamson Act contract, technically speaking, the way they operate is very technical. It's very legalistic. It's very sophistry abounds here. The sophistry is we don't allow structures, but if we have, maybe the industrial stockyards, or if we have large industrial storage yards and excavated, graded, paved, whatever. It's okay. It's okay because the county does not enforce the Williamson Act contracts. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more in-person speakers?
June King?
Yeah, I'm just going to speak from here. I just wanted to clarify about the previous thing. I really support the easements and TBC, and I know Andy worked there. I was the chairman and I was on that board. So I really would like you guys to investigate that more of requiring easements on this land. And about this property, I too want to be honest, I did contribute to the fund to sue the city about the Garavante thing. I think it's great property. I think it has lots of good habitat values, and I think the citizens around there don't want it. But you're never going to get it with this price. If you really think it's important, then you need to up the amount that you're going to offer that person. But that's a really hard choice because it is a lot of money. But I think you have to say, I'm not going to get it with this amount of money. If I really want it, you're going to have to put more money into it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No more public comment?
No more raised hands online.
Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee for motion.
So we've offered them $880,000. We offered them development prices and they said no. What's the chance if we double the price per Mr. Schneider's point, about 880 to 1760, or I mean 1.7? What are they gonna say?
I can only speculate, but based on the letters, their responses, they weren't even interested at the suburban market rate values, which is much higher than doubling the open space value. And this is the third time that they've told us in writing they're not a willing seller. They're in contract and they want to move forward with their development proposal. So it wasn't a surprise to us. So I can only guess, but I would be surprised if they would accept a higher open space value, even if it was doubled, since they said no. Be the third or fourth time.
Well, I'll move that we offer them 1.76 million, which seems to be what the public wants.
Yeah, I can second that.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
The motion was to go back and offer 1.7 and see what their answer to that question
seems to be
what the community is asking for.
Point of order. May I ask, are you asking them to then bring back a grant application
If the seller accepts the offer, correct.
Thank you for that clarity, because I didn't know. Thank you. Yes,
That's your motion. We have a second. Roll call vote.
Member First,
Aye.
Member Carley,
Aye.
Chair Wilson,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So can I do one thing for the sake of time? Can you present 5 and 6? Can I jointly put those together? Is that okay? No problem. Okay. You gotta leave.
I have somebody in there, but I don't know this case.
Sean,
So,
we're over time, huh?
Yeah, I think we need to.
Can we delay these two?
so I'm being requested to continue the next 2 items to our next meeting. Is that acceptable? I'll need a motion to do that.
I'll move we postpone the next 2 items to the next meeting.
Roll call vote.
Member First,
Aye.
Member Nyberg,
Aye.
Member Carley, Chair Wilson.
Yes. Real quick, you can do future agendas, items, and speakers. We have 4, 5, 6, and 7 that will be coming back. Anything else? So our next meeting, they have it. Maybe in April or May. Yeah. Next meeting is March 15th. Just to make note, it's at a different location. It will be at the Public Works Building in Dublin on Gleason. Any questions or comments from the members of the committee? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.